Good afternoon, everyone. So I am the CEO of MIDI, and I'm here to describe what we call the Innovation Roadmap for Medical Device Development, fostering innovation and optimum programmatic direction under strategic regulatory deployment. So just a bit about MIDI. So MIDI, we've been in business over 50 years. We're a multi-generational company. We assist our clients in the full life cycle of medical device development, from requirement capture through concept, proof of concept, then implementing prototypes, and then commercialization. So operationalizing out of New York City, but now we just recently opened a division in Toronto. So we're happy to be here at the show, and this is a big coming out for us. So we use a process called development DNA. That's our innovation roadmap. That's our quality management system. And it conforms with ISO 13485 so that eventually, when we're finished the process and we're ready to bring it to manufacturing, it'll be ready for both FDA approval and Health Canada approval. And we develop devices from wearable all the way through to laboratory equipment, operatory equipment, and large format MRI systems. So the agenda, so we're going to talk about the paradigm shift in medical device development and what that entails. But first, we're going to define innovation and what makes an innovative medical device, and how does a well-formatted roadmap, which we're calling development DNA, provide for that innovation on that medical device. We'll provide a case study and then do some Q&A after that. So first, let's start with the paradigm shift. So there's a common perception in the industry that regulatory design controls and risk management may inhibit device innovation, that it's a mandatory process that someone has to go through, which obviously you do, but that it inhibits innovation. So our premise is that the paradigm shift is that the recommendations of the FDA and Health Canada, along with the regulatory requirements, the risk management and control, actually, using a properly formatted innovation roadmap, will yield next step results in that system. It's a method by which you can then take the next step and really ideate and move beyond the competition. And we're going to touch on how that's done. So I mentioned the word innovation multiple times, but let's define what innovation means. So it's commonly thought that innovation includes 4 key aspects. One key aspect is that it addresses an unmet user need, or augmenting a particular aspect of a device to enhance a user need. A second key aspect is that it's scalable, the medical device, at an economical cost. If it can't be afforded, if it doesn't fit into the pricing structure of a hospital or a healthcare system, it's not going to be adopted. Third, that it has efficacy, both from a functional perspective, but also a usability perspective. And if the device is not usable, you're not going to have proper efficacy. So both of those. And lastly, that the device is safe and addresses the FDA and Health Canada needs. So four key aspects we're stating as related to innovation and what makes an innovative device. So, the FDA and Health Canada, they're team players. They encourage the process of medical device development. They have our backs and interest in seeing corporate success. So they both want the device development team to think preemptively, though, when it comes to device development. And that's part of the proper road mapping of that process, and that road mapping will lead to innovation. So as related to the first 2 key aspects of innovation, meeting an unmet need, and also developing a scalable system at an economic cost. The first 2 gates of our innovation roadmap address that, and we'll show you that roadmap, the flow chart on it, and how it operationalizes and addresses that. The aspect, the third and fourth aspect of what creates an innovative device is related to the efficacy of the system and the safety of the system, is addressed in our third and fourth gate in our development DNA process. So What we want to convey is the perception is related to realizing the FDA and Health Canada recommendations and prescriptions are structured to yield innovation and not hinder and diminish it with a properly formatted roadmap, and that's the paradigm shift. So here's our roadmap. And by the way, afterwards, if anyone wants a copy of this roadmap, just see me on the right over here, and we'll make sure we get a copy of that to you. And again, this is the process we use to operationalize medical device development for our clients and to innovate for them. So it starts out with gate 0 and 1. So the blue and the green, the first steps, are the agile product development method of product development. So we call it the sandboxing. So in gate 1, under discovery research, we're going out and capturing the requirements external to the client through voice of the customer, meeting with all the key opinion leaders, and internal to the client. It's in that very capture of that information, the observation, the contextual immersion, that the innovation starts to speak, and the addressing the unmet user needs starts to reveal itself. Second, still in that blue step, we use systems analysis. We take those requirements, and it's important to prioritize them in a quality function deployment format so that you truly understand what is important to your program. You want to hit the 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s, 6s. Some of the lower ratings maybe could be foregone. We then take those requirements and start to conceptualize around it. Now that's gate 1. So we're moving into the green step. So under the conceptualization phase, we're thinking in a concurrent engineering format using DFX. The X is the variable, the DFA, designed for assembly, the DFM, designed for manufacturing, designed for service, designed for maintenance, designed for supply chain, and you get the idea. There are other X's in there. So this is the very aspect of starting to think about designing and engineering commercializable systems that are scalable at an economic cost, which checks another box is related to an innovative characteristic of a medical device. Lastly, before we leave the sandbox, we do proof of concepts. So we build tests to de-risk the concepts that were originated in the conceptual development. Once we have a functional set of proof of concepts in place, we then shift into the third gate, and that's that off yellow color gate that you see there, where we move out of an agile process into a waterfall process and lock down under design controls and risk management. So we take the requirements that were captured from the sandbox, we start to decompose the requirements into specifications using design history file cloud tools. We then build out a thread of verification and validation tied to each of those specifications, and it's our checklist. We start checking the boxes, checking off, making sure that when we're engineering the electronics, the software, the mechanical, the manufacturing engineering, the human factors, that it's addressing all of those key aspects of the system. This aspect is addressing the efficacy that's needed from a usability and functional perspective, and it's addressing the safety aspects because that design history file has built into it the appropriate IEC documents according to the regulatory path that was chosen to go down. This then segues into creating a manufacturable package that then can be manufactured. So the flow diagrams you see under there, just going back at a high level, in the first two gates, that agile method is iterative, but in the last two gates, you do have a feedback loop when you do your verification of your commercialized design and test for that, and then the validation loop when you have something you can hand to the end users, the validation loop, and you could go back and tweak that design based upon your findings there. So what we do is, so we break down for each of those steps that I described the tools and the methods that we use to achieve that innovation. So we have market research tools, some of those that are on the screen. I can't go through all of them because we have limited time, but voice of the customer, immersion, contextual immersion studies, very user-focused. We have market-focused goals and objectives and methods that we use. Uh, DFX goals that I mentioned, capturing those and starting to define what will make a successful device. The regulatory strategy goals and what's the minimum viable regulatory path at first to start generating revenue. That's especially important with a startup. You go for that minimum viable path and you go for the more complex filing later on after you're generating revenue. So it's important to define then what you're doing. From a systems analysis perspective, so we're hitting all of the capture and prioritization, not only from an engineering perspective, a scientific perspective, marketing, service, manufacturing, design for manufacturing, usability, feeding that all into the matrix in the cloud. We then, from an agile product development approach, conceptually start to break out what is the DFX and how are we addressing all of those elements. Starting to break out what the intellectual property is and the regulatory path on that, and then the proof of concepts, again, in an iterative fashion, doing digital simulation at first, FEA, CFD, then getting into hands-on proof of concepts, building and testing both at a functional proof of concept level and at a human factors proof of concept level. That is in the form of mock-ups. They don't need to be functional, putting them in the hands of users, starting to get feedback on that. So again, sandboxing, not over-constraining ourselves, but informally capturing the requirements. Then we go into and we lock down in a waterfall method, because now we're in the commercialization cycle and we start to lay out the planning. Some of our clients already have that in place. Startups need our help in laying out the planning, the design and development plan, the risk management plan. How are we going to go about formalizing all this information in the cloud in a traceable electronic signature format? We will then start to load those into the cloud tool, decomposing them, again, as I mentioned, doing the verification and validation on that. And just to jump forward to a case study. So this particular program, we deployed the very process on that. As I mentioned, we do wearables, from wearables to tabletop systems, all the way to floor standing systems. We've been in business 50 years, exposed to a lot of different medical device development for our clients. This particular device we did for Northwell Health. They're the largest private employer in New York State. We work with their Feinstein Institute. It's a bioelectronic medicine device. It sits on the ear. It stimulates the Simba concha. It activates the spleen, pre-releases platelets to accelerate wound healing for emergency medical services and for military applications. So for this particular program, because it's a new-to-the-world device, it's an unmet need. It's checking all the innovation boxes. It had to meet the appropriate efficacy, the safety aspects, because we're stimming the body. The cost to manufacture needed to be very inexpensive so that you could wear it at home. It has an app component. It has a cloud component to connect to the doctor so the doctor can track and monitor your progress. So what I'd like to do is hand this over now. And again, I'll be on the side if you have any questions about the process or would like a copy of this, this particular product development roadmap. But now I'm going to open it to the floor to see if there are any questions out there. And if anyone has questions, I could bring the mic to you for the questioning.
What's your ideal client?
My question is, what's your ideal client?
Thanks for that question. So we really love the AvaMed show because a lot of our clientele are either large med tech, and we're filling in their gaps because they already have a development team in place. And they appreciate our process, even though we may be adopting to their process. Then also what we find at events like this are the small startups. So the small startups are using our full bandwidth of capability, relying on that entire stream of capability. Thanks. Any other questions? No?
Do you generally start with a lab prototype, or what do you start with?
Excellent question. So we're not the originators of the intellectual property or the originating idea. So we often like the client to at least have some thought of intellectual property and some sort of, we'll call it like Frankenstein setup on a lab bench, something that's sort of doing something to the effect of what they'd like to see. It doesn't have to be complete. At that point, that's an excellent point to engage us to then bring it on that commercialization journey. Any other questions?
Can you talk to some of the technology that you're using to manage the information through the process? Any systems or advice that you have for the audience around that?
Yeah, excellent question. So it's important to, and I'll focus on the design history file aspect of it. It's important to embrace your own design history file and design control and risk management and product development cycle. So there are some companies that say they offer out-of-the-box quality management systems and SOPs and all that. You could purchase those, but you really need to modify them according to the way you want to operationalize, because you have to live the dream after you do that. So we use a tool called Matrix Requirements to capture the requirements, do the design control and risk management and all of that. There are other programs out there, but we tend to like that particular package. Well, thank you, everyone. We've run out of time. I appreciate you listening and wish you a great show.